Representative from Maryland, Congressman Steny Hoyer. Steny, it's good to see you.
It's good to be here.
How are we doing? How are we doing?
We're not doing very well.
No, we're not.
And we're not doing very well because we're playing chicken with the credit and reputation of the United States of America. And really, it's hard to feel what we're going to negotiate about. You have a Republican House that sends to the Senate a bill that does two things. Funds the government at the figure they think is appropriate, $988.
Yeah.
And it defunds Obamacare, which nobody felt was going to pass.
So how long have you been in Washington?
33 years.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
No.
Ever seen
95 and
like
96, when we did shut down the government, the argument was about the level of funding for education.
Joe's here.
Thank heavens,
yeah.
Joe's here.
Right in front of the camera.
I thought this is going to be a great morning.
Yeah, I know. I love it.
So, Steny, you were talking about the good shutdown.
I was talking. There are no good shutdowns from my perspective.
You do understand, Steny. You were saying the same things about me in 95 and 96 that you're saying about Ted Cruz now.
I don't think that was the case.
No, you guys were saying horrible things.
You were never as hard a line as
I was a lovable right-wing nut. I still am. But we've had a lot of government shutdowns before. Tip O'Neill shut down the government with Ronald Reagan. But hold on a second, let me ask the question. How is this one different from the 20 or so government shutdowns?
So this is different because this is a tactic. This is not a result of the inability to get an agreement. This was a tactic to do something that they knew they couldn't do, and that is defund Obamacare. Frankly,
sounds like they've given up on that already.
Well, I don't think they've given up.
They're not talking about Ted. I mean, Ted Cruz isn't talking about Obamacare and the shutdown anymore, right?
I don't think anybody thinks when you hear them talk about the Affordable Care Act that they've given up on getting rid of the Affordable Care Act, which they think is going to destroy the world.
Aren't they just looking for an escape now? They're just trying to get out of line.
Well, they should be, but
I would hope they would. But Speaker Boehner was pretty hard line yesterday when he said have the votes for
Why do you think he did that? After saying this past week he said we're going to clean debt ceiling.
He gave a little bit of confidence and said I'm not going to let the country default. And then he pulled back yesterday. Frankly, we have 186 Democrats who have signed a letter which said they'll vote for a clean debt limit extension. Part of that is to give confidence to the markets that there are a large number of Democrats. Frankly, I think we'll get over 190 votes for a clean debt limit extension, which means that Boehner people will say we're not going to bridge the debt limit, which is a responsible
I mean, they've got that already with Peter King and
yeah, I think we'll get 30 votes.
Other conservatives.
Joe, not only that, I've talked to you, call yourself a right wing. When you were in the House, I don't think that's the case, but
I still am.
Let me tell you.
No, listen, I still am, but that's the thing, though. You can be a right-wing nut and still work with left-wing nuts like you.
Yes, there you go.
My God.
Enough charm.
Oh,
how about that? That's my charm offensive.
So there we are. There we are. The two nutcases duking it out here.
How important is it, though? When Chris Matthews talks about this in his book, I really was on economic issues and a lot of issues, very, very conservative. But I still talk to you.
Look,
you still talk to me. How important is it, Joe, to talk to people that you disagree with?
Without naming names, because I don't want to get them in trouble, and that's the problem. There are 140, 150, 160 Republicans in the House conference right now who think what's being done is irrational. But let me tell you what they're all doing. They're all looking over their shoulder at the Tea Party primary challengers. And they've seen in Delaware, where Mike Castle lost. They're looking in Indiana with Richard Lugar lost. They look in Missouri and in Nevada, where had they had a mainstream candidate, we probably would have won the Senate seats.
Yeah.
So that's what some very conservative Republicans, you and I worked across the aisle.
Right.
We worked. I have a lot of very close friends that I work across the aisle with who shrug their shoulders and say, we don't know what's wrong with these guys. So the problem is the difference, stark difference, 95 to 96, was that we had people who thought this is not really a reasonable policy, let's get real. You have a lot of Republicans now who believe this is a reasonable policy. They bring the country to their knees at what they want by
So let's bring it to the here and now if we can, Congressman. Ed has said emphatically, said over the weekend in the AP, CR. He will not negotiate over the debt ceiling. They have to pass a clean CR. They have to pass a clean debt ceiling, which means complete abject surrender on the part of the Republicans. Do you think that is realistic, and what would you advise the president in terms of having some kind of a discussion with some small concessions on either side to maybe as a bridge to a longer conversation about a bigger deal?
Steve, first of all, abject. You understand, I know you do. The House sent the Senate a number to fund government. In '95, the difference was Clinton wanted to spend more money on education. They wanted to spend less money on education. Well, that's a pretty easy negotiation. You can come somewhere in between. Here, the Republicans sent
Well, actually, that's a misstatement, Stinny. We wanted to balance the budget in 7 years.
Sure.
You guys just didn't want to balance the budget.
Which, of course, we did balance the
Because
budget.
we forced you to.
Because we forced you to. Because
But even 10 years later, you're talking about education. I love you. It wasn't about education. It was about balancing the budget, paying down the debt.
And what happened? We balanced the budget, paid down the debt. How do we do it? We did it through a
By
deal.
By bringing Democrats to their knees.
But what about...
you know I'm joking, Steve.
I do know.
No, you know how we did it? We worked together
Joe,
at the end.
It's interesting, the analogy. Gingrich made a deal with Clinton.
Right.
And that was extraordinarily important. His right wing at that point in time in the party excoriated him. You remember that?
Well, right, but right now Obama is saying he doesn't want to negotiate.
We're taking their number. What my point was, there the argument was about level of funding to balance.
Yeah.
Now the number that was
You're taking the number, but it's just in a CR. It's not a number for the whole fiscal year. It's a CR.
So it's not a long-term.
It's not a long-term
for them
to have a discussion.
And that's what. To the conference in a budget conference. Our number is $91 billion, higher than their number, the Senate marked up number than the. So what do? You go to conference, you sit around a table like this, and you talk. But Paul Ryan and the Republicans have refused to appoint conferees. Harry Reid tried to go to conference, and the Republicans objected. They're talking about now sitting down and talking. We've been ready to do that for 6 months, Steve, and that's what we ought to be doing. So what we need now, and what the president's saying is, look, we need a short-term bridge here, 6 weeks. They're talking 10 weeks, but 6 weeks or 10 weeks to sit down and talk. And like any democracy needs to do, compromise.
All right, Steny.
Reach agreement.
Thank you so much.
Congressman Steny Hoyer.
I may disagree with you, but you know what? I can talk to you.
How was dealing with Joe compared to dealing with these guys?
I was a little rough around the edge.
Joe is not as tough. But, Joe talks a tougher game than he plays. Joe plays a pretty reasonable game, ultimately.
Yeah.
That's going to hurt him, I'm sure.
He just killed him.
He talked about...
He'll never be elected.
He just talked about those right-wing nuts that were tough on Gingrich.
Yeah.
We ran him out of town.
Yes.
So, yeah, we were kind of tough.
They ran him out of town, and the result of the deal he made with Clinton gave us 4 years of budget balance.
Thank you, Republicans. All right.